Drake has had a long career. Dating back to his days on Degrassi, he's been a main figure in rap for over 15 years now. And after so long, most artists would start to fizzle out or be long gone in general. Drake has moved so calculated and been so on point for most of his career that it's no wonder he's been on top for so long. But a lot of people say that Drake has overstayed his welcome. And for the first time in his career, it feels true. Drake is gearing up to drop his new project, Iceman, a new solo album, and in my opinion, there's many things pointing to this being Drake's last album, and in this video, we're going to talk about it. If you're new here, my name's Ron. I upload weekly videos on hip-hop. I'm trying to hit 10K subscribers by the end of the year, so be sure to subscribe if you want to help me out with that goal, and let's get right into the video. So Drake's new album, Iceman, is coming out, I'd say, within the next 6 months. He's still dealing with his UMG dispute and all of that, and while that's going on, there's going to be no Drake album. Obviously, UMG is not going to let Drake eat while he's actively trying to sue him. But let's, in theory, say this all settles over in the next 3 months. Drake's able to drop his album. I think that after this project, Drake is gonna retire. Not necessarily from music entirely, but more so from dropping albums and start putting his other businesses at the forefront. And there's a couple reasons for this. The first reason is going to be the most obvious, his age. Drake is nearing 40. For the first time in Drake's career, people are looking at Drake as the old man. Every time you see anything related to Drake on TikTok or anything that Drake's done in the past couple months on video that might be a little goofy or a little like, it's not professional, whatever, Drake just being himself, there's always going to be a bunch of comments saying, 38-year-old man, by the way, Unk pushing 40, still rapping. Bro's really 40 years old thinking he's 25. You're going to see those comments every time. And it's for good reason, because Drake has positioned himself to receive those type of comments because he's 38 now, which not to say 38 is old in the grand scheme of things. Really, the only place where 38 is seen as old is in pro sports league and in rap. And you look at the type of music that Drake makes, he's perpetually stuck in the space of making music as a 25-year-old rather than his music maturing and the topics that he talks about sort of evolving as he ages. And he's not the only rapper to do this. You look at Future and he's still rapping about the same old stuff. Future is still seen as this toxic king, whatever. Bro is 55. I don't think Future's actually 55. How old is Future? Future is 41. I wasn't that far. He's older than Drake. That's pretty crazy. But Drake's age is starting to really play a downside because usually rappers at this age begin to take a different venture and slow down on the music. And if not, their topics that they tend to rap about tend to mature over time, but not Drake. Like I said, he's stuck in this mentality of being a 25-year-old in terms of the music he makes, and he doesn't really venture into more grown topics per se, and he sticks with the same formula. At Drake's age and how long he's been in the game, he's achieved everything there is to achieve to be a successful rapper. So you would think at this point, the matter of what you're rapping about to a more mature, more seasoned approach, rather than still rapping about getting all the hoes in the club or dropping $1 million at the Pink Pony Club or whatever Drake does on the weekend. I don't know. I'm never chilling with the guy, so I don't know. But I think at this point in Drake's age, it's more beneficial for him to just start to look at the other ventures outside of it, because it leads right into my next point, which is falling off, the fear of falling off. Drake, listen, I'm not saying that Drake would fall off to the point where he'll sell 20K first week, but what I do know for a fact is that Father Time is undefeated. There's no world on earth where Drake could be dropping for the next 10 years and still be selling over 100K, 150K. I don't see that as the case. I think that Drake at most has a solid 3 years left on top. 3-4 years max. Low-key, this has me feeling like that LeBron tweet. The dude was like, oh, LeBron's 30 now. He's not going to be wreaking havoc in this league for more than 5 years max. You know that tweet I'm talking about? I know some of y'all know what I'm talking about. I think that Drake is, in his mind, fearful of falling off, and that's why he's always positioning himself with the younger generation. You just saw him make that announcement at Streamers University. You always see him moving around with the younger guys like Aiden Ross. He's doing business with Kai Cenat. He's always tapped into the younger audience and tapped into what's going on in the mainstream and what the younger audience is more looking into, and that's why he's been able to stay relevant for so long. But that's also why he gets all these old comments, and that's also why people look at him a little sideways in terms of what he might be into or what his preferences might be, because he's always positioning himself around younger people. And at some point, you start to look like the weird old guy, you know what I mean? I think that Drake knows this. I think that he knows that what he's doing is intentional because he wants to be commercially successful for as long as possible. And by positioning himself with the younger audience, he's staying at the forefront of the audience that essentially runs rap and that determines who's hot or who's not, which is like the younger, let's say the 16 to 29 age group, maybe even younger, that really determine who's hot or who's not, who really are the main consumers of hip hop. So he's always trying to stay at the forefront of their mind. But at the same time, the new generation is getting younger and younger. We're getting more younger kids coming in and growing up. And they're starting to see Drake as an older and older man. 10 years ago, when I was really big into Drake, was 27, 28. Even shit, when I was in high school, I still looked at Drake as, bro's a little bit up there. But in the grand scheme of things, I was 16, bro was 20, whatever, 26, 27 at the time. And now, you look at this new generation of 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are getting into music heavily, and they're looking at Drake like he's a grandpa because they've known that he's been in the game for so long. This new generation is going to look at Drake like how, for example, I graduated high school in 2016, how I might have looked at a 50 Cent. So Drake is just being looked at as an older and older guy who's trying to fit in with the younger crowd. And I think while it is playing to his benefit in terms of commercial success, I think in the way that fans view him and the way fans talk about him, it's playing to his detriment a little bit, and it's not really helping his case at all. As a third reason why I think Drake should retire is also obviously the Kendrick Lamar feud. Losing the beef with Kendrick definitely put a big stain on his career, and it also ties in with another point with the UMG lawsuit. I think that the sting that the loss put on Drake is one that isn't going to be forgotten about by people. Obviously, everybody's pretty much moved on at this point, but I think that anytime you bring up Drake's name, the beef is always going to be in the back of people's head, or is always at the least going to be mentioned. Part of that being with Academics, because Academics' ass won't stop talking about it, bro. He's always referencing back to Drake. He's always referencing back to Kendrick. At this point, Academics, this is a whole nother tangent for a whole nother video, but Academics feels like he is Drake's number one fan, which he has been for the past 2 years at this point. But I think that Academics is sort of playing a negative role in Drake's perception as well, because he's not helping people let go of this Drake Kendrick beef. People are still talking about it. Whenever you bring up Drake, people are still mentioning it, and it just feels like a nuke went off. And this is sort of the aftermath where the next few years after the nuke goes off, the whole area is just a wasteland that is uninhabitable. And that's what rap feels like, because this is just a continued topic that continues to be brought to the front of people's mind by people like Academics, and even just by the fans really just continue to make TikToks and make content about that beef, or that the beef might continue, even though that's phased out for the most part. But you look at that, and that's another reason why Drake hasn't really been cooking in the beefs in the past 10 years. Since the Meek Mill beef, he's got cooked by Pusha and by Kendrick, and I'm sure, at this point, I don't even know how Drake would do against Pharrell. I know him and Pharrell have never gotten along. I feel like if Pharrell popped out right now and publicly beefed with Drake, went track for track, that wouldn't go too well for Drake, because his track record has essentially gotten soiled after this Kendrick Lamar beef. So I think the Kendrick beef, retiring now instead of continuing. The thing is, if Drake continues to make music, this will continue to be brought up, because obviously that beef has elevated Kendrick to such a point that he's essentially hand in hand with Drake right now commercially. And which, I mean, they've always been pretty hand in hand, but Kendrick has always been a little bit of a step down in terms of commercial sales, because he is a little bit more conscious with his music. And you look at Drake, if he continues to drop, this is just going to continue to be refreshing everybody's mind, because the more music he drops, everybody's always going to be looking out like, did he diss Kendrick? Did he throw a sub? Did he throw a little subliminal? Did he, make a reference to Kendrick at all? And I feel like the music at this point is going to take more of a stance of, is he still coming at Kendrick, rather than people actually wanting to listen to the music or wanting to be invested in the music. And I think at that point, you're at a negative point in your career, because people are mainly looking for the antics in a way, rather than the music itself. Probably the most important reason, I'd say, is that Iceman is being propped up to be Drake's huge album, to be Drake's graduation, essentially, or magnum opus, essentially, because he's saying this is going to be the album that, he said himself, this is going to be the album that proves him to be better than the Beatles. This is going to be the album that, puts him really at the top. So I think if Drake truly believes that, one, he's leaving this album no room for criticism. This has to be a banger. This has to be a slapper. This gotta be a 10 out of 10, bro. If not, it's over. Like, people are just gonna be clowning you, which, every artist, whenever they drop an album, they're like, yeah, this is the one. This is the one. But when it's Drake, you're this deep in your career and you're saying this is the best project you're dropping. This is like the album that's gonna prove you to be better than the Beatles. you're setting yourself up for failure if this album isn't perfect. And I'm sure the album is great, don't get me wrong, but it's really all dependent on how it's received, how it's pushed, with how much stain that he's done to his relationship with UMG. I don't think they're really going to push this album much at all once their whole legal troubles are settled. I think they're just going to say, all right, screw this guy, let him drop, and, we're not really going to push it. Just whatever he does, he does. I think that this could be a graceful bow out for Drake, because either way it goes, it's either going to be received really well and people are going to think it's one of Drake's great projects and he's able to leave off on a high horse and leave right off into the sunset, or UMG isn't going to push it. It's not going to be received well. His numbers are going to be lower than usual because he doesn't have the label backing him as hard as they should be. And it's going to be not necessarily a low point for Drake, but it's going to be lower than expected. And he's still going to be able to leave the game with his dignity, essentially. If he continues trying to drop and trying to chase like those high numbers, it's just going to look worse and worse and worse for him. I think it's beneficial for him to leave while he's still considerably at a high point in his career and still viewed with a lot of respect by a lot of fans, even though you can say he's pretty split in terms of respect by fans. I think that Drake is definitely at a point where max, I think he has 5 years left in terms of rapping. As far as what I think he's going to do after rap, I think he's just going to focus more on his label, on his clothing brand. I know he just dropped that cologne collab, that slick. I might have to cop low key. I've been hearing it's smelling good. I've been hearing that, I need to tap in low key. So if any of y'all have that cologne, let me know. Let me know how it's treating you. But yeah, that's what I think. I'm thinking that Drake might retire after this project. I think it's in his best interest to retire. If you think differently, definitely let me know in the comments. I would definitely be interested in what you have to say. But if you look at historically artists that have tried to continue pushing through past their peak, which I do think Drake is past his peak, it's just never really a graceful ride off into the sunset. And Drake's career has gone pretty perfectly, I'd say, for somebody who's been in the game for 15 years. He's only had a couple stains in his career throughout the past couple years. So I think that his best interest would be to drop this album, go on one more tour. If his contract is done after that, then just bow out, ride off into the sunset, go take on your other ventures, and just call it a career. I think that's in the best interest for Drake. I think that's the best way for him not to really go downward, or not to really be start to be viewed more as a fallen off rapper in the future, and sort of still be looked back on in 10 years as, damn, Drake was that guy. He never really... I think that if Drake retires after this album in 10 years, people aren't really going to remember all the negatives of Drake's career, other than the Pusha T and the Kendrick beef. But other than that, everything else is super minor. I don't think he's going to really be remembered for anything else really that negative, other than the two beefs that he lost. But that's just what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if you guys think otherwise. Let me know why you think Drake might continue to keep going after this album. And let me know if you think Drake needs to retire. I definitely want to know what you guys have to say in the comments. I appreciate you guys sticking around all the way through and watching the video. Definitely make sure you subscribe if you made it this far. I'm trying to hit that 10K subs by the end of the summer, and I know we can get there, bro. We're going to turn up the rest of the summer. I'm going to be posting a lot more. I'm going to be a lot more consistent. I appreciate y'all showing love on the last video. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out right here in the end cards. We're going to keep going crazy the rest of the summer and the rest of the year, and I promise we're going to hit that 10K by the end of the summer. So I appreciate y'all sticking around so long. I appreciate y'all coming through to watch the video, and yeah, I'm going to be posting another video here in the next day or two, so be on the lookout for that. My name's Ron. I hope y'all have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.